quote, oddest episode I remember, and then talked about the Coke incident. When you made your statement to the FBI, why was it that that was omitted if it was so strong in your mind and such an odd incident?
I spoke to the FBI agent and I told them the nature of the comments and did not tell them more specifics. I referred to the specific comments that were in my statement.
Well, when you talked to the FBI agents, you did make specific allegations about specific sexual statements made by Judge Thomas.
Yes.
So that your statement to the FBI did have specifics, and my question to you, why, if this was such an odd episode, wasn't it included when you talked to the FBI?
I don't know.
I'd like you to take a look, if you would, at your own statement in the first full paragraph of page 5 on the last line, and ask you why that was not included in your statement to the FBI.
Excuse me, my copy is not this. It's not here. Would you refer to that passage again?
Yes, of course. Referring to page 5 of the statement which you provided to the committee, there's a strong allegation in the last sentence. And my question to you is, why didn't you tell that to the FBI?
When the FBI investigation took place, I tried to answer their questions as directly as I recall. I was very uncomfortable talking to the agent about these instances. I am very uncomfortable now, but I feel that it is necessary. The FBI agent told me that it was regular procedure to come back and ask for more specifics if it was necessary. And so at that time, I did not provide all of the specifics that I could have.
Professor Hill, I can understand that it's uncomfortable, and I don't want to add to that. And if any of it is something you want to pause about, please do. You testified this morning in response to Senator Biden that the most embarrassing question involved, this is not too bad, women's large breasts. That's a word we use all the time. That was the most embarrassing aspect of what Judge Thomas had said to you.
No, the most embarrassing aspect was his description of the acts of these individuals, these women, the acts that those particular people would engage in. It wasn't just the breast, it was the continuation of his story about what happened in those films with the people with this characteristic, physical characteristic.
With the physical characteristic of?
The large breast.
Well, in your statement to the FBI, you did refer to the films, but there's no reference to the physical characteristic you described. I don't want to attach too much weight to it, but I had thought you said that the aspect of the large breast was the aspect that concerned you, and that was missing from the statement to the FBI.
I have been misunderstood. It wasn't the physical characteristic of having large breasts. It was the description of the acts that this person with this characteristic would do, the acts that they would engage in, group acts, acts with animals, things of that nature involving women.
Professor Hill, I'd like you now to turn to page 3 of your statement that you submitted to the committee we got just this morning. And the last sentence on the first full paragraph, you again make on that statement a very serious allegation as to Judge Thomas, and I would ask you why you didn't tell the FBI about that when they interviewed you.
I suppose my response would be the same. I did not tell the FBI all of the information. The FBI agent made clear that if I were embarrassed about talking about something, that I could decline to discuss things that were too embarrassing, but that I could provide as much information as I felt comfortable with at that time.
Well, now, did you decline to discuss with the FBI anything on the grounds that it was too embarrassing?
There were no particular questions that were asked. He asked me to describe the kinds of incidents that had occurred as graphically as I could without being embarrassed. I did not explain everything. I agree that all of this was not disclosed in the FBI investigation.
Was it easier for you because one of the FBI agents was a woman, or did you ask at any time that you give the statements to her alone in the absence of the man FBI agent?
No, I did not do that. I didn't ask to disclose. I did not.
Well, I understand from what you're saying now that you were told that you didn't have to say anything because if it was too embarrassing for you. But my question to you is, did you use that at any point to decline to give any information on the ground that it was too embarrassing?
I never declined to answer a question because it was too embarrassing. No, he asked me to describe the incidents, and rather than decline to make any statement at all, I described them to my level of comfort.
Well, you described a fair number of things in the FBI statement, but I come back now to the last sentence on page 3, the first full paragraph, because it's a strong allegation, and now you have said that you had not omitted that because of its being embarrassing, or you might have said even something embarrassing to the female agent. And my question to you is why was that omitted?
Senator, at the time of the FBI investigation, I cooperated as fully as I could at that time, and I cannot explain why anything in specific was not stated.
Professor Hill, you testified that you drew an inference that Judge Thomas might want you to look at pornographic films. But you told the FBI specifically that he never asked you to watch the film. Is that correct?
He never said, let's go to my apartment and watch films, or go to my house and watch films. He did say, you ought to see this material.
But when you testified that, as I wrote it down, quote, we ought to look at pornographic movies together, that was an expression of what was in your mind.
That was the inference that I drew, yes, with his pressing me for social engagements, yes.
That something he might have wanted you to do, but the fact is, flatly, he never asked you to look at pornographic movies with him.
With him? No, he did not.
Clarification.
I'd rather not.
No, to determine whether or not the witness ever saw the FBI report, does she know what was stated by the FBI about her conversation?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'm asking her about what she said to the FBI.
I'm just asking it. Have you ever seen the FBI report?
No, I have not.
Thank you.
Would you like to take a few moments to look at it now?
Yes, I would.
Okay. Let's make a copy of the FBI report.
I think we have to be careful to make sure the
Senator Grassley asked me to make sure
only as it pertains, maybe you could continue, only as it pertains to her. We're not at liberty to give to her what the FBI said about other individuals.
I was asking you, Professor Hill, about the FBI report, obviously because the portion I'm questioning you about relates to their recording what you said, and I think it's fair, one lawyer to another.
No, I would continue
To ask about
because
it.
you are not asking her directly. I just wanted to know whether or not her responses were at all based upon her knowledge of what the FBI said she said. That's all I was asking.
Well, she's asked to see it, and I think it's a fair request, and I would be glad to take a moment's delay to...
This is the
have her
FBI
look at it.
report as it references Professor Hill. Only Professor Hill.
May we stop the clock, Mr.
Yes, we
Chairman?
will. We'll turn the clock back and give the senator additional times. I will not ask how long to turn it back. I'll leave that decision to Senator Simpson. Senator Simpson.
I'll be watching the clock. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No. But, okay. Make sure it's 10 minutes. That was not to hurry you along, Professor. That was to ask for silence in the room. The only point I wish to make is that you know what's in the report and understand the report is a summary of your conversation, not a transcription of your conversation. While we have this momentary break, the senator has 10 or more minutes remaining, and at the conclusion of his questioning, we'll recess for lunch for an hour, and then begin with Senator Leahy. Whatever, an hour from the time.
I see. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that part. Thank you.
All right. Have you had a chance to peruse it?
Yes,
Thank you. Now,
thank you.
I apologize to my colleague for the interruption.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman. Professor Hill, now that you have read the FBI report, you can see that it contains no reference to any mention of Judge Thomas's private parts or sexual prowess or size, etc. And my question to you would be on something that is as important as it is in your written testimony and in your responses to Senator Biden, why didn't you tell the FBI about that?
Senator, in paragraph 2 on page 2 of the report. It says that he liked to discuss specific sex acts and frequency of sex. And I'm not sure what all that summarizes, but his sexual prowess, his sexual preferences could have.
Which line are you referring to,
The
Professor?
very last line in paragraph 2 of page 2.
Well, that says, quote, this is not too bad, I can read it. Thomas liked to discuss specific sex acts and frequency of sex, close quote. Now, are you saying, in response to my question as to why you didn't tell the FBI about the size of his private parts and his sexual prowess and Long John Silver, that information was comprehended within the statement, quote, Thomas liked to discuss specific sex acts and frequency of sex?
I am not saying that information was included in that. I don't know that it was. I don't believe that I even mentioned the latter information to the FBI agent. And I could only respond again that at the time of the investigation, I tried to cooperate as fully as I could to recall information to answer the questions that they asked.
Professor Hill, you said that you took it to mean that Judge Thomas wanted to have sex with you, but in fact, he never did ask you to have sex, correct?
No, he did not ask me to have sex. He did continually pressure me to go out with him, continually, and he would not accept my explanation as one as being valid.
So that when you said you took it to mean we ought to have sex, that was an inference
Yes.
that you drew.
Yes.
Professor Hill, the USA Today reported on October 9th, quote, Anita Hill was told by Senate staffers she signed affidavit alleging sexual harassment by Clarence Thomas. Anita Hill was told by Senate staffers her signed affidavit alleging sexual harassment by Clarence Thomas would be the instrument that, quote, quietly and behind the scenes, close quote, would force him to withdraw his name. Was USA Today correct on that, attributing it to a man named Mr. Keith Henderson, a 10-year friend of Hill and former Senate Judiciary Committee staffer?
I do not recall. I guess, did I say that?
Well,
I don't understand who said what.
Let me
from
go
that
on. He
quotation.
said Keith Henderson, a 10-year friend of Hill and former Senate Judiciary Committee staffer, says Hill was advised by senator staffers that her charge would be kept secret and her name kept from public scrutiny. Quote, they would, apparently referring again to Mr. Henderson's statement, quote, they would approach Judge Thomas with the information and he would withdraw and not turn this into a big story, close quote, Henderson says. Did anybody ever tell you that by providing the statement that there would be a move to press Judge Thomas to withdraw his nomination?
I don't recall any story about using this to press anyone.
Well, do you recall anything at all about anything related to that?
I think that I was told that my statement would be shown to Judge Thomas, and I agreed to that.
But was there any suggestion, however slight, that the statement with these serious charges would result in a withdrawal so that it wouldn't have to be necessary for your identity to be known or for you to come forward under circumstances like these?
There was no, not that I recall. I don't recall anything being said about him being pressed to resign.
Well, this would only have happened in the course of the past month or so,
Yeah.
because all this started just
Sure.
in early September.
I understand.
so that when you say you don't recall, I would ask you to search your memory on this point, and perhaps we might begin, and this is an important subject, about the initiation of this entire matter
Sure.
with respect to the Senate staffers who talked to you. But that's going to be too long for the few minutes that I have left, so I would just ask you once again, when you say you don't recollect whether there was anything at all said to you by anyone that, as USA Today reports, that just by having the allegations of sexual harassment by Clarence Thomas, that it would be the instrument that, quote, quietly and behind the scenes, close quote, would force him to withdraw his name. Anything related to that in any way whatsoever?
The only thing that I can think of, and if you'll check, there were a lot of phone conversations. We were discussing this matter over very carefully. And at some point, there might have been a conversation about what might happen. But there might have been, but at that, it wasn't, I don't remember this specific kind of comment about quietly and behind the scenes pressing him to withdraw.
Well, aside from quietly and behind the scenes pressing him to withdraw, any suggestion that just the charges themselves in writing would result in Judge Thomas withdrawing, going away?
No, I don't recall that at all, no.
Well, you started to say that there might have been some conversation, and
there might have been some conversation about what could possibly occur.
Well, tell me about that conversation.
Well, I can't really tell you any more than what I've said. I discussed what the alternatives were, what might happen with this affidavit that I submitted. We talked about possibility of the Senate committee coming back for more information. We talked about the possibility of the FBI going through the FBI and getting more information. Some questions from individual senators. The statement that you're referring to, I really can't verify.
Well, when you talk about the Senate coming back for more information, or the FBI coming back for more information, or senators coming back for more information, that has nothing to do at all with Judge Thomas withdrawing. So that when you testified a few moments ago that there might possibly have been a conversation in response to my question about a possible withdrawal, I would press you on that, Professor Hill, in this context. You've testified with some specificity about what happened 10 years ago. I would ask you to press your recollection as to what happened within the last month.
And I have done that, Senator. And I don't recall that comment. I do recall that there might have been some suggestion that if the FBI did the investigation, that the Senate might get involved, that there may be, that a number of things might occur, but I have to be honest with you. I cannot verify the statement that you're asking me to verify. There is not really more that I can tell you on that.
Well, when you say a number of things might occur, what sort of things?
May I just add this one thing?
Sure.
The nature of that kind of conversation that you're talking about is very different from the nature of the conversation that I recall. The conversations that I recall were much more vivid, they were more explicit. The conversations that I have had with the staff over the last few days in particular have become much more blurry. But these are vivid events that I recall from even 8 years ago when they happened. And they are going to stand out much more in my mind than a telephone conversation. They were one-on-one personal conversations, as a matter of fact, and that adds to why they are much more easily recalled. I am sure that there are some comments that I do not recall the exact nature of from that period as well. But these that are here are the ones that I do recall.
Well, Professor Hill, I can understand why you say that these comments, alleged comments, would stand out in your mind. And we've gone over those. I don't want to go over them again. But when you talk about the withdrawal of a Supreme Court nominee, talking about something that is very, very vivid, stark, and you're talking about something that occurred within the past 4 or 5 weeks. And my question goes to a very dramatic and important event. If a mere allegation would pressure a nominee to withdraw from the Supreme Court, I would suggest to you that that's not something that wouldn't stick in a mind for 4 or 5 weeks if it happened.
Well, Senator, I would suggest to you that for me, these are more than mere allegations. So that if that comment were made, these are the truth to me. These comments are the truth to me. And if it were made, then I may not respond to it in the same way that you do.
Well, I'm not questioning your statement when I use the word allegation to refer to 10 years ago. I just don't want to talk about it as a fact because so far that's something we have to decide. So I'm not stressing that aspect of the question. I do with respect to the time period. But the point that I would come back to for just one more minute would be, well, let me ask it to you this way. Would you not consider it a matter of real importance if someone said to you, Professor, you won't have to go public, your name won't have to be disclosed, you won't have to do anything, just sign the affidavit, and this man, as the USA Today report, would be the instrument that, quote, quietly and behind the scenes, close quote, would force him to withdraw his name. Now, I'm not asking you whether it happened. I'm asking you now only if it did happen, whether that would be the kind of a statement to you which would be important and impressed upon you that you would remember in the course of 4 or 5 weeks.
I'm not sure what he I don't recall a specific statement, and I cannot say whether that comment would have stuck in my mind. I really cannot say that.
The sequence with the staffers is very involved, so I'm going to move to another subject now, but I want to come back to this. And over the luncheon break, I would ask you to think about it further, if there's any way you can shed any further light on that question, because I think it's an important one.
Thank you.
Professor Hill, the next subject I want to take up with you involves the kind of strong language which you say Judge Thomas used in a very unique setting where there you have the chairman of the EEOC, the nation's chief law enforcement officer on sexual harassment. And here you have a lawyer who's an expert in this field, later goes on to teach civil rights, and has a dedication to making sure that women are not discriminated against. And if you take the single issue of discrimination against women, the chairman of the EEOC has a more important role on that question even than a Supreme Court justice. Supreme Court justice is a more important position overall, but if you focus just on sexual harassment, and the testimony that you have described here today depicts a circumstance where the chairman of the EEOC is blatant, as you describe it. And my question is, understanding the fact that you're 25 and that you're shortly out of law school and the pressures that exist in this world, and I know about it to a fair extent. I used to be a district attorney, and I know about sexual harassment and discrimination against women, and I think I have some sensitivity on it. But even considering all of that, given your own expert standing and the fact that here you have the chief law enforcement officer of the country on this subject, and the whole purpose of the civil rights law is being perverted right in the office of the chairman with one of his own female subordinates, what went through your mind, if anything, on whether you ought to come forward at that stage? Because if you had, you'd stop this man from being head of EEOC perhaps for another decade. What went on through your mind? I know you decided not to make a complaint, but did you give that any consideration? And if so, how could you allow this kind of reprehensible conduct to go on right in the headquarters without doing something about it?
Well, it was a very trying and difficult decision for me not to say anything further. I can only say that when I made the decision to just withdraw from the situation and not press a claim or charge against him, that I may have shirked a duty, a responsibility that I had. And to that extent, I confess that I am very sorry that I did not do something or say something. But at the time, that was my best judgment. Maybe it was a poor judgment, but it wasn't a dishonest and it wasn't a completely unreasonable choice that I made, given the circumstances.
My red light is on. Thank you very much, Professor Hill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Professor Hill. We'll adjourn until 2:15. Reconvene at 2:15.